This month, 50 U.S. senators expressed their support for a trade agreement with Taiwan. And the American Chamber of Commerce in Taipei is also pushing for a bilateral trade agreement, or BTA. And with us today is the president of AmCham Taipei, Leo Seewald. Well, Leo, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And it's great to hear that you guys are working for a BTA between the U.S. and Taiwan. Can you tell me why AmCham is pushing for this?
Well, I think we'll be celebrating our 70th anniversary in Taiwan next year. So after 69 years now, we've come to the conclusion that anything that is good for Taiwan is good for our industry, good for our industry group, good for our members. And if Taiwan prospers, then our membership will prosper. And we think that a bilateral free trade agreement will help Taiwan prosper and create stability in the region and really improve the interconnectivity between Taiwan and other countries, and particularly with the United States.
So it's great to see also that there's a lot of support for it in the U.S. Senate. Do you see that talks will begin soon?
Well, I think we're working on that. I'm not sure how soon they'll begin, and we don't, to be honest, we don't really think that much will happen before the election. But that doesn't mean that we don't see bipartisan support for it. So we hope that soon after the election we can start the talks, and certainly we're working even now to try to make it happen.
So no matter who gets elected, you think that the talks will continue to go forward?
Absolutely. I mean, I can just give you an analogy. I started getting involved with AmCham a number of years ago as a board member, and we used to go to Washington other than this year because of COVID, and we'd call it our door knock or CEO mission, and we'd visit Congress and Senate. And in the first few years I went, going back about 3 years ago, you would see that the Congress was quite pro-Taiwan, but you didn't have that sense in the Senate. I think the support for Taiwan has really grown over the last number of years, and we really believe it's bipartisan now. So whether it's a Trump government or a Biden government, we really believe that the connectivity between Taiwan and the United States will continue to grow. An important part of that will be a trade agreement.
Do you know why it has grown in the past few years?
I think there's a number of reasons for it, but on a purely business side, the importance of Taiwan to U.S. business has grown. If you go back 3-4 years ago, we were the 11th largest trading partner. We're down to 9 right now. So Taiwan has really improved its business relationship with the U.S. over the last number of years. I also think the dynamics between the United States and China have also helped Taiwan indirectly to boost its profile.
So there is a U.S.-China tech war going on, and it seems that Taiwan is going to play a key role. What do you see as Taiwan's role with this struggle going on between the U.S. and China?
Taiwan is well recognized for its protection of intellectual properties, and in the technology area, that's really keen. That's only one, but it's a key reason why a lot of American companies in the tech industry are developing stronger ties with Taiwan. And you've seen it in the news, you've heard it in the news, Microsoft, Apple, a lot of these other tech companies have really expanded their investment into Taiwan and grown their business presence here for reasons that they know that their technology is safe here. You also see that on the medical technology area. The Patent Protection Act that Taiwan passed a few years ago has gone a long way to show Taiwan's commitment to upholding international intellectual property rights. And from a business perspective, you still kind of struggle with that on the China side. So Taiwan has really made a lot of efforts to make itself more friendly to the technology industry, and that's why you see that.
And we also see that TSMC has become a very key player, right?
Right.
In terms of semiconductors. And do you think that Taiwan is going to play an increasingly important role in the global economy and supply chain?
We would like to see that. We would like to see Taiwan continue to develop its influence in that area, but we also want to see Taiwan diversify into more tech industries, not just semiconductors, but really support this whole shift in supply chain. That's when you talked about the senators and their letter. I think that reflects a fundamental recognition that that the United States needs to diversify its supply chains. And I think Taiwan can play an important part in that on many different levels, not just in the semiconductor area.
So what other industries do you see Taiwan, playing an important role in the supply chain and the global economy?
We see it in a lot of areas, but it is particularly in those areas that are technology driven, because that's where Taiwan is very strong. In high-end manufacturing, we see it in the medical industry as well. So those key high-margin industries are really a great opportunity for Taiwan.
It's very exciting then, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and how do your companies, the members of AmCham, how do they feel about working with people in Taiwan?
So we have over 500 members, and they're almost in every industry you can imagine. And they represent the largest companies that you see globally, but also more medium-sized enterprises as well. And we do a business climate survey every year. Notwithstanding COVID, people are all optimistic about their businesses in Taiwan. They're all optimistic about the 3- and 5-year future of their businesses here. Taiwan is seen as a very friendly place to set up an operation and to run an operation. And in some industries, like the industry I used to come from, asset management, you see Taiwan really dominating in many areas in terms of the amount of revenue generated from places like Taiwan compared to other places around Asia.
Really? So in addition to what you said, intellectual protection, property protection, what are other factors that make Taiwan an attractive place for global companies?
I think there's a lot of factors. When you look at the Taiwan people, they are hardworking, well-educated. There's a lot of honesty, and you don't see people switching jobs the way you do, particularly in other markets like the mainland, where people tend to work for quite a short period of time and switch to a new company. The workforce in Taiwan is very stable. Another thing that you see in Taiwan, for example, again, going back to my original industry, you see a predominance of you see a lot of diversity in that you see women in the workforce to a much larger extent than you would in other parts of Asia. The company I used to work in the asset management industry, you'd see more than half of the employees being women at all levels. And that's really something that other Asian countries struggle with. Taiwan is quite egalitarian in that sense.
So what does that do to benefit businesses, having more women in the workplace at all levels?
Well, diversity is something that is such a prominent theme now, particularly in Fortune 500 companies, and they all struggle with how to get more women, particularly in more senior levels, into their companies. And there's a recognition that if you have a more diverse workforce, you have a better mix and a better decision-making process.
So do you work with women? You do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how would you describe...
AmCham office is mostly women as well.
It is, actually. How would you describe Taiwanese women at work?
You know, I never look at things that way. I never have.
I'm just curious from your perspective.
Well, maybe I think I'm typical of a Taiwanese boss in that I just see them as people. I really don't differentiate that way. And when I go to hire, I don't consciously, I need this sex or that sex. In Taiwan, you don't have to. There's enough great candidates, both male and female, that you just pick the best people. And I think that's the way the world should be everywhere.
That is, yeah. And I know women in Taiwan are very highly educated and ambitious, so it's not a surprise, what you noticed.
Right.
But well, going back to the bilateral trade agreement, that's something that you're working for and promoting. What do you think that would do for Taiwan? There's
two key benefits to it. The first is that it helps companies, it will help international companies diversify, or particularly U.S. companies diversify their supply chains. And it's an opportunity for Taiwan to prosper in that area. I think Taiwan has never been top of mind for global industries. Having worked for a number of them, everyone is focused on China. Now people are starting to think, okay, what can we do in Taiwan? What can we, if China, if the relations are cooling there and there might be some trade disputes there, what other areas can we set up in? Taiwan is a great place to try to do that. And we should do all we can to encourage those companies to make Taiwan their next choice, and a free trade agreement would go a long way to doing that. The other thing is more in terms of a macro benefit, which is mentioned by those senators, those 50 senators you mentioned in the beginning. We're all trying to look for a more stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific. And China has been very strong for many years and continues to be and will always be, which is great. But what we also need to have is kind of other strong players within the Indo-Pacific region. And I think Taiwan has an important role to play in that, to kind of develop other options.
So are you optimistic about a bilateral trade agreement happening?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that has been on the AmCham white paper issue for over 10 years. But I can honestly say that this year and next year, I think we will get some real results.
So that will make some American products cheaper for Taiwanese as
Absolutely.
well, like cars maybe? Or
it might, potentially,
it might?
yes. Potentially, yes.
And it would probably bring more foreign businesses to Taiwan.
I think it definitely would. I think it also makes Taiwan more top of mind for American companies. And that's, as I said before, that hasn't been the case in the past. So that's another reason that we really think it would benefit Taiwan.
Well, that's great. Well, it's wonderful what you're doing here for Taiwan.
Well,
and,
as I said, our members benefit if Taiwan prospers. So, and many of our members, you know, the people in charge are Taiwanese to begin with. But even on a more fundamental basis, when our market does well here, then we all do well. So, and we really see this as a way for Taiwan to have a longer, a more stable and prosperous future.
So, Leo, it's been great speaking with you, and we really appreciate all that you're doing for Taiwan, heading the American Chamber of Commerce and also pushing for a bilateral trade agreement. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I've been speaking with Leo Seewald, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Taipei.